Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos can be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Hi, welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire. Today, we're going to talk about...
What is asbestos?
That's the question we're going to answer.
It's a big question. We get asked it quite a lot. And before we go into it, there's a few things that asbestos isn't. It's not man-made. There's a big misconception out there that asbestos was man-made. It doesn't grow. It doesn't form. It doesn't appear.
It's not spores.
Spores, that's another big one. There's no asbestos spores out there. So that's what it isn't. So what actually is it? Well, the shortest, easiest, basic way to describe asbestos is it's a mineral that is formed within the veins of a rock.
Yeah, so it's a naturally occurring silicate mineral, to be precise, isn't it?
To be very precise. Yep.
Which is fibrous in structure.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. It's mined out of the ground, it's milled down, the veins are milled down, and then we use that raw fibre.
Yeah, it's kind of crushed on site. It's a similar mining process to how you would mine coal and other sort of products that come out of the ground.
Yeah, coal, talcs, those kind of things.
So yeah, if you can imagine the big mining trucks that go digging into big pits, extracting the actual raw asbestos fibre out of those.
I suppose the next kind of thing is, well, where is it in the world? The main places that it was mined commercially: Russia, China, Brazil, Kazakhstan, India, Canada as well, South Africa. So quite a large chunk of the world have got asbestos in one shape or form. Now, they don't all mine the same asbestos. They mine different types in different parts of the world because, like a lot of mineralogy, it only forms in the certain conditions that are there. So Canada, for instance, mined chrysotile white asbestos.
Yeah, and Australia mined asbestos as well. They predominantly mined chrysidolite blue asbestos. That mine has been shut down for many years now, and it's off the maps, so you can't actually see that.
Yeah.
If you do go onto Google, you can actually see some of the big asbestos mines, and that will give you sort of an indication of how much asbestos has come out of these places. So if you look at it in Google, there's a place called Asbestos in Russia, and there's a town called Asbestos in Canada. So if you look for those, you'll be able to see the big, massive asbestos mines, and they are really gigantic.
Yeah, they were like open cast mines. So you're not looking for, when I think of a mine, I think of like the old northern coal pits where you've got like little entrances. These were open cast mines. So you're looking for massive swaths of land that have just been dug out basically to grab that raw fibre. The next kind of question in that one, how many types are there?
Okay, so there's 6 types of asbestos. Of the 6 types, there are 3 which were most commercially utilised in this country, and we refer to them as the big 3.
The big 3.
So those big 3 were chrysotile, white asbestos. When we say the big 3, that was the biggest. So chrysotile was massively used, especially in the UK. Probably makes up about 90 to 92% of all asbestos-containing products contained chrysotile white asbestos.
Again, another large proportion of asbestos, amosite, which is also known as brown asbestos. We in the UK were the biggest users of this in the world at one point or another. We imported the most, we used it the most in products. We loved asbestos, and we loved brown and white asbestos, definitely.
Yeah, there is some interesting sort of thoughts on brown asbestos because we were the biggest user of brown amosite asbestos in the world, and we've kind of got the biggest mesothelioma death rates within the world. And some sort of scientists are linking those 2 facts together, that there may be a link between our massive use of amosite brown asbestos and, again, our high mesothelioma rates.
Yeah, which, again, I can sort of see why we used it the most. It's in most of the products that we manufactured here. And when I say we used it the most, if we imported like 30 to 40 million tonnes of asbestos, that went into a lot more products because only small amounts of asbestos essentially was used in products. And what I mean is at the factories, they would take the raw asbestos fibre, and then add that to other things. So, for instance, garage roofs. Everybody knows the corrugated garage roofs. They would take about 15% chrysotile white asbestos and add that to Portland cement to then manufacture and make the roof sheets that you can see literally everywhere in the country.
The next biggie was chrysotile blue asbestos. So chrysotile blue asbestos, that was really used predominantly in the early days of asbestos use. The school of thought behind that chrysotile was kind of drifted off from, because there was a thought publicly that chrysotile blue asbestos was more harmful than the other amosite and chrysotile. If you have got an asbestos product that contains chrysotile, generally speaking, it's an older product. So that could be an asbestos cement. So if it's asbestos cement sheet, generally, if it contains chrysotile, it's a lot older than if it was just chrysotile. And same with asbestos insulating boards. If you've got a board which contains chrysotile, generally speaking, that is an older board.
That's a very good point. There is kind of misconception out there that white's the good one, brown and blue are the bad ones, with blue being the worst. That's not the case. That's not how we work to. Within the industry, we work and treat all asbestos as the same. They're all basically the same control limit. So the level that is set that we can disturb, if you like, asbestos to, and it can't go above that. And it's the same for all three. It's not like blue is a higher or a lower or anything like that. Like I say, they're all treated the same.
Yeah, I think that sort of comes from an industry sort of institute that the asbestos industry sort of produced.
The manufacturing industry and the mining industry.
Yeah, originally when who were producing the products, they sort of volunteered banning chrysotile blue asbestos and then amosite brown asbestos before chrysotile. And there's a school of thought that that was generally because originally they were only really using chrysotile. As I said at the beginning, chrysotile makes it probably 92% of all products in this country. So again, the asbestos manufacturing industry sort of, I wouldn't use the word smokescreen, but they volunteered to sort of stop using chrysotile and amosite before chrysotile. And that kind of led to a misconception that chrysotile was safer than the others. But all asbestos types, if you're exposed to it, will produce the same asbestos-related disease. And there's no hard evidence to conclude that one's safer than the other.
No, definitely. So they're like the main three, the big three. And then we've also got lesser three types of asbestos: actinolite, tremolite and anthophyllite. They were mined. They weren't as commercially mined and sought after as the big three. But when they were mined, if, say, they were going after, I don't know, chrysotile white asbestos and they come across a vein of tremolite asbestos, they didn't say, oh, right, stop works, lads, we've got to split that off. They just rubbed their hands together and said, happy days, threw it in the mix. And that's why we see asbestos, the lesser three, within products today. Our lab, generally speaking, they are looking for, yes, all asbestiform type fibres, but predominantly it is the big three, the white, the blue, the brown. But we are checking for the lesser types, and it's not uncommon to find traces of, like I say, the lesser three within products, basically, as a contaminant or just as a trace element within that.
Yeah, those lesser threes, they were utilised and they were mined, but never on the scale of the big three. As Ian said, they were never used on that scale, and they were normally as a contaminant. So of the 6 types of asbestos, they fall into 2 categories of fibre type. The first fibre type is called serpentine. Now, serpentine fibres are curly, wavy types of fibres, and chrysotile is the only asbestos which is classed as a serpentine fibre. Okay, so serpentine fibres, the unique properties of them, they've got great tensile strength. Okay, so they are very strong fibres. They're delicate and silky lustrous, so they're quite shiny. They're very flexible, however, they are inelastic. Okay, so serpentine fibres, these types of fibres can be spun and woven just like cotton, so it can be used in a similar fashion to weave certain products.
Yeah, and I mean, to give you an idea of some of the products, ropes, yarns, curtains, asbestos fuse suppressors, so woven fuse suppressors that line the really big fuse cartridges. They were kind of common things and common elements of how they kind of took advantage of the fact that it could be spun and woven.
Yeah. We've seen asbestos clothes.
Yes.
And dishcloth. We're not just sort of using it in buildings and stuff. We were wearing it at some point. And that's how versatile chrysotile was. And you can kind of see because of those unique properties, why it was used so much. You know, you could pretty much do anything with cryostyle asbestos. You know, it was such a, at the time, magical, wonderful, useful product. If you were to look at asbestos cryostyle fibres under a microscope, you would see that they are very curly, very wavy, and that's their sort of how they look under a microscope.
So the other types of fibres, which all the other 5 fall into, are amphibole. So you've got serpentine fibres, which are the curly fibres, cryostyle, and then amphibole, basically straight, needle-like. So all of the other asbestos types are amphiboles. They've got great tensile strength, they are elastic, and like Neil was talking about, under a microscope, that's when you really do see how straight and needle-like they look, basically.
Yeah, very different looking structure to the amphiboles to the serpentine fibres. So if you were to take the two, you've got the serpentine and amphibole, so that generally covers the asbestos types, 6 types.
Yep.
So thanks for listening. I hope that was useful. If you've got any questions, please join us on our Facebook community page, so Asbestos Knowledge Empire, and we'd like to see you on the next one.
Yeah, and finally, remember, asbestos first, not last.